Okay, so in this video, we're going to be playing around with alignment, vertical alignment within columns to kind of give you an idea of how that is. Now, I'm using Columns Pro in this example purely because Columns Pro allows me to add some styles to individual columns so that we can more easily see what the vertical align option is actually doing. Okay. So what I've done here is inside Site Styles, just to help visualize, I created 3 background swatches, red, green, and blue, just simply to add red, green, and blue backgrounds. And then I applied those to each column. So inside column 1, I just added the class red. Column 2 has class green. And guess what? Columns 3 has class blue, right? Now, another thing that I did is I added some content here to make sure that all 3 columns were different sizes. Okay, so let's go ahead and preview this. If we preview this, you'll notice that we have 3 columns with our column backgrounds. The content is all different sizes. But what you'll notice is the column itself by default matches height. So that's really powerful to know. And by adding background colors, we can visually see that. This happens inside the normal column stacks as well. It's just inside normal column stacks, you can't add classes to individual columns. So it's harder to see. Okay. But visually speaking, all columns by default are actually set to the vertical alignment mode of stretch. So if we look at the default, which is set to inherit, essentially inherit means stretch as well. So you can explicitly set it to stretch. You'll notice it's the same. Let's play around with some of these settings here though. If we set this to be top, okay, what you'll notice is the columns no longer match height. They match the height of their content. And then all the actual columns are aligned to the top. Now, if we wanted to do align middle, what you'll notice is this is really powerful to visually see this. The actual container that contains the content here is going to be shrunk down to the size of the content, and then we can vertically align them to the middle. Okay. Then if we do bottom, you'll notice that all the content is aligned to the bottom. And then if you do stretch, again, that's the default, which is everything to be match height. Now, again, we can, in the Columns Pro, this is a feature specifically to Columns Pro, we can override that on an individual column basis. So right now it's set to stretch. But let's say on column 1, I wanted it to be on the bottom, right? So when we preview this, essentially, they're all stretch except for column 1, which is set to be bottom. So that's how we can use the override options in Columns Pro to define different vertical alignment for different columns. Now you're probably wondering, okay, cool, Joe. Now how do I get stretch alignment with my content aligned to the middle, right? That is a little bit trickier. And I'll show you a quick example of how you can do that right now. Essentially, you have to know what your highest column is. So right now, my tallest column is this 3rd column, okay? And I'm going to add a couple extra elements into the first 2 columns so that we can actually equal the height of the 3rd column, okay? So this does require that you actually know what the tallest column is in order to achieve this. Otherwise, you can use something like my match height stack to then incorporate that into the columns. And no matter which column, it'll make sure that they're all even as well. So in order to achieve this, essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 1 column stack into column 1. And I'm going to add the same thing into column 2. And then we're going to add our content into these 1 column. Then inside that 1 column, we're going to set the vertical alignment to be middle. Oops, middle. Now, one thing I've done here is I've also created a swatch, a height swatch, and I gave it a class of full height. And what it did is it set the height to be simple, and it's set to be full container height. So essentially, we're telling the 1 column to grow to the size of the container that you're within. So we're going to add that full height class to each of these columns. It's going to grow to the height of that column, and then it's going to vertically align its content to the middle. Now, when we preview that, you'll notice that the header and the markdown paragraph here are vertically aligned to our tallest column, which is our SVG apple. Cool.